feeling, fuck the system. Well, I already did that like an old flame. I was sent to earth with a mission. But first I gotta work through all the old pain, work through all the traumas that affected. My mind, body, spirit is connected. I'm tryna feel good, it's time to heal good. I'm tryna feel good, it's time to heal good. I'm tryna heal.
Hi, I'm Makenta.
And I'm Tabisha.
And this is Heal Good.
A space where we discuss how to take healing into your own hands.
Because we know if you want to feel good, you gotta heal good. Today, we are talking about something that we've just been noticing recently, which is why you can learn from anyone and everyone in your life, regardless of the age, regardless of if your experience with that person is negative or positive, however you perceive it. There's always something to learn.
Everyone is your teacher.
And recently I've been looking at my own life as like, I'm on Earth School. I'm here to live on Earth and be a student of life. And the phrase of the only thing I know is that I know nothing at all, I think is so important because we can get so caught up in feeling like we know everything. But there's just always something else to learn, no matter how enlightened you are, really. And in particular, like I noticed that, from a young age, we're taught to respect our elders, and there's so much that we can learn from people who are older than us, like just wisdom. And like that's why you hear people say like, oh, you're an old soul, that our elders, just learning from them can teach us so much. But I think one thing that's not as much talked about is respecting our youth, because as we talk about all the time, like our inner child, it sounds corny, but like really the children are our future. And there's in the innocence of children, that's why they say like kids say the darndest things. The innocence of children brings up so much truth and pure truth and a different type of wisdom that often we criticize children for or consider them to be like naive. But really there's like such an essence of truth in what kids have to teach us. Or just people younger than us. Because I think sometimes we could get caught up in being like, well, I'm older than this person, so I know more. But that's not necessarily the case, especially as like I'm seeing like I'm a millennial and like I watch the Gen Zs and like we make jokes, but like the Gen Zs, I feel like I have a lot to learn from their application of knowledge, and they're just so much more quote unquote woke than I was at that age because of their access to information, and they hold a new consciousness in the new generations.
I think that's why it's so important as we grow to continue to educate ourselves and to not think that we know everything just based off of our experience. Yeah, I'm sure there's wisdom that's gained, but knowledge is something that's like ongoing. You can stay learning until 99, like that that never has to like end. And yeah, I really do feel like there's a mindset around, but more so like a stigma of people of older generations, and there's also people who are in the younger generation that are just like, these old folks don't know what they're talking about. But we all could learn so much from each other. At the end of the day, that's what we're all here to continuously do. That doesn't stop. You're always learning. As long as you're breathing, you're always learning. That's the clearest way that I could put that.
And we know, like, that as our DNA is passed on, we carry the DNA of our ancestors. But I can clearly see, like, when I talk to my nephew, I could see sometimes he just teaches me things if I'm willing to listen. And I feel like his level of empathy that he's had since he could talk, even before he could talk, I remember just watching his natural level of empathy, I feel like is a level of empathy that I see adults only learning now. And it's just this innate thing, especially now that I have a lot of friends who have children, and watching them parent and talk about how they learn from their child and that actually helps them grow as a person is just so eye-opening, because if you ever look at your parents and you think, oh, well, they don't know this or they don't know that, they're not supposed to. That's why you were born, to correct the mistakes, or not even mistakes, just to upgrade the knowledge that your parents had. And if you then have children, your children will be responsible. You better not be naive and think that your children won't be smarter than you, because that's actually the function, so that we can continue to elevate our consciousness here. And I see like people say like, oh, young people these days, they're so sensitive. Or like, I remember like growing up, the notion of like millennials, like we just can't sit still. They can't keep a job, because we're learning to break certain chains that future generations
have to break
didn't
the
have.
patterns,
Yeah, they
the
didn't
structures.
have the opportunity to. And we're not overly sensitive. We're actually just becoming more and more aware. And I think that the moment we decide that we're done learning is we're actually just doing ourselves like a huge disservice. Because even as we try to share knowledge that we've learned, I'm allowed to be wrong. And, you know, we could come back 3 episodes and be like, actually, I learned something new. Or what I said before, there's actually more to it than that. And I just think never think that you're too enlightened or too awakened to learn. Yeah, and that's why we talk about the journey of healing, because you are healed, but you're always also healing. It's there's always, once you've healed one thing, then best believe there's going to be a new challenge that you will heal from. And so I think it's just heavy emphasis on respecting children a lot more, because then the more we respect children, the less we will have to heal as adults. And we know, even through studies that show that children who are encouraged to make mistakes, who are encouraged to speak their mind and just be themselves, are more successful and emotionally stable as adults. So don't look at someone younger than you and just automatically assume that they're foolish. The other day I was learning about all this stuff about business from a 14-year-old who makes like $50,000 a month or some crazy amount, and she's, you know, a Gen Z who just grew up on the internet and is helping educate people on doing this. I could have heard her say, oh, I'm 14, and just turned off the video because I thought, oh, you're 14, you don't know anything. She knew more than me. So,
and it's because, you know, with all the technology, everything that we have right now, like educating themselves on it so early. I remember when I was like probably 10 or 11 and coding started to be like a thing. Like, we're from the generation where things were heavily like developing, like so quickly, like the iPhones. We're from like the iPhones, the iPod, like just seeing all of that just move so quickly. And then these kids coming out and just getting with the time like instantly, is because they were born and they had an iPod in their hand. Like, you know, like we got to see that actually being built and then given to us, you know? So it's just like learning how the times are changing and learning about the technology that they have within their time. I feel like that's what's making, you know, these Gen Zs like so successful, because some of, you know, millennials could look at, say, TikTok, for example, and be like, that's whack. Why are they even on that app? They're just dancing. They're just... You can use anything to your benefit. And that's what it's about, the time that we're in, especially if you have a business, to, you know, get on these platforms, find different ways to get yourself out there. Even if you don't know how to do that, I guarantee you there's a Gen Z out there that could help you do it.
If you're open to learning, and it takes humbling yourself and balancing between being open to the new technology and the new ways of life, while also honoring the ancient wisdom and the ancient traditions. And I think the best people, it's giving Middle Child by J. Cole.
Oh my gosh.
If anyone likes J. Cole, you could see he talks about I'm right in the middle of 2 generations. And I think even when it comes to artistry. That's why, Jay-Z is still relevant. He could have had a really old head mind state and said, oh, these kids, they don't know what they're doing. But he stayed open. He stayed with the times. He's definitely still an old head. He's a GOAT. He's a legend. But at the same time, he stays relevant because he's open to learning from younger people and was obviously influenced by the generation before him. And that balance is what creates such magnetism and such truth, because it is a balance of truth. So just know, if you're here on earth,
you're here to learn.
You're here to learn. And the moment you just act like this is a class and there's lessons to learn, you will keep graduating. And you don't have to, this isn't about learning in a certain way that you have to learn a certain way. It's just about being open to learning. And life is a little bit easier when you just treat things like, oh, what is this lesson? What is this lesson? You could learn. There's not one person in my life who I can't learn from. Even a person who I perceive as negative or I have a terrible experience with, that those are actually the biggest lessons for me.
You're learning something new about your boundaries, or maybe your own judgment, whatever that is, right? So it's just important to remember that we're always learning. We're always learning, all walks of life. And if we could just treat it more like a classroom, it's so much more fun.
Yeah. All walks of life. And if you've been traumatized by school, which most of us have been,
most definitely,
don't think of it as that type of what would be your classroom. How would you learn? And especially when you talk about walks of life, instead of thinking that someone else is inferior to you. Again, talking about diversity, that's why I'm so grateful to live in Toronto and to have grown up in a multicultural society, because I've learned so much from other cultures and I see beauty in it, and I'm not automatically trying to prove how my culture is better than someone else's. That's actually not how my mind state works at all. And it doesn't mean you can't have pride in your culture, but just understand that there's something to learn from everyone. I just also wanted to mention an affirmation for tapping into that earth school mentality of knowing that you can retain knowledge but still be open to learn, which I often include in my daily affirmations, is I am wise and humble. The wisdom, which is innately within me, I honor that. I give myself credit for my wisdom, but the humility is so important, because wisdom alone, you can start to think that you're better and that you're some sort of God. You are God-like, but you are not God, and that's where the humility comes in. I am wise, but I am humble, and those are the best teachers. Once you've learned enough, you could become the best teacher. So.
Once you've learned enough, you never stop learning.
You're right. There you go. There you go. And even even before you've learned, you could still be a teacher to someone.
Exactly.
But I would rather be a positive teacher in someone's life than a negative teacher, because I know
Well, that's gonna depend on the person now.
Well, that's true. But I know I've been the bad guy in some people's stories, and now I just try to make a conscious effort to be a good person. They might not view me as that, but that's okay.
It's all about the intention.
But I know I've caused negative lessons for people, just as other people have caused negative lessons for me because they weren't wise enough, or before I had a certain level of wisdom. So I acknowledge that too, that before I've learned certain things, I could be that negative lesson in someone's life. But now I strive to be a positive lesson, even though it might not be received that way. And that's okay too. That's probably just another lesson.
Exactly. Well, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. If this was helpful, please don't forget to share it with a friend, and we'll be back helping you and ourselves heal good.